Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. My name is Patrick Lyons. I am one of your co-hosts. I'm here with one of my partners in crime, Patsy Feeman. Patsy, hello, welcome to you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. I think you're going to love our guest today. And we are flying as a twosome today because we are without the one and only Leb Tannenbaum. Leb is traveling internationally. He's actually in the Philippines at the moment, or maybe not as you're listening to this, but as we're recording. So we are without Leb today, but he will be back for our next episode. So let's dive in. Today's going to be an exciting episode for you, our listener. Today we're talking about how and when and why and the benefits of developing your next level leaders. And to do that, we brought in potentially, I think at this point, I can say one of the most passionate people on the planet about developing next level leaders. And that is our very own Patsy Feeman. So Patsy, welcome to the Frustrated CEO podcast.
Thank you. It's fun to be in a different seat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're on the hot seat. Okay, so let's start with the traditional bio so people know more about you. So listener, you've been with us for a while. You certainly know Patsy. You know her voice. You know her areas of expertise. Let's talk a little bit about where she comes from. So Patsy draws on her deep background as an architect in design management to help organizations clarify what matters most and reach the highest levels of performance. That gives Patsy a systems perspective that helps her clients identify unproductive patterns that impede progress and alignment for more clarity and congruency. Patsy is and has been a principal at New Legends now. New Legends is a Pacific Northwest company focused on a 4-part framework that supports and guides sustained organizational transformation through the integration of common language, simple tools, supportive technology, all for long-term success. Her particular passion is organizational alignment through high-performing teams and leadership development. That's why you've been listening to her here on the Frustrated CEO podcast. Everything we talk about falls under those high-performing team and leadership development. Patsy specifically helps leaders develop the tools and behaviors that they need to meet the daily challenges and build great cultures where everyone can flourish. Now, I mentioned her particular passion, and the reason why she's on the hot seat today is that expertise for developing the next generation of leaders, the next level of leaders. There's a subtle difference, and we'll talk about that today. Preparing them to move into more senior strategic leadership roles. Why is this important to you, leader? Because the stronger your next level leaders are, the easier your job becomes. And the opposite is true. The more maybe I would say the weaker they are, but the more complex your job is. So as a design thinker and executive coach, Patsy's worked in industries that include construction, real estate, manufacturing, retail, and technology. When she's not doing that, she's actively involved in the local Rotary Club, where she focuses her time on international projects, peace building, supporting younger professionals. So even outside of work, developing next level leaders to develop their leadership through community service and engagement. And her efforts were recently recognized when she received the Kenyon T. Bement Award for Outstanding Service last year. Patsy is an adventurer by nature. She enjoys discovering new places and occupies her free time with a variety of outdoor activities such as camping with the family. And then coming up this fall, she's training for a long walk across Spain. How exciting is that going to be?
It's going to be incredibly exciting, adventurous.
Yeah. So all that said, Patsy Feeman, again, welcome to the Frustrated CEO podcast for the 47th time, as this is our 47th episode. So I mentioned subtle difference between next level leaders, next generational leaders. The purpose of developing next level leaders. Let's start here. How does developing next level leaders correlate to a company's ability to scale and grow?
Great question. Let me separate two things out and then I'll answer that question. First is, as we move or develop professionally in whatever organization we're with or whatever industry we're in, we often go from being an individual contributor to a manager. Then we are identified, we work well with people, then we're given some leadership skills. So there's kind of we get promoted up through the organization, almost like climbing mountain, one step in front of the other. What I think we fail to recognize is that what's needed to succeed in one role is different than what brought us to success in the other role. Not completely, but somewhat. And I think organizations forget to acknowledge that, first of all, and then forget to give their next level of leaders the skills, the behaviors, and the mindset they need in order to succeed. So it's easy that somebody gets promoted, but we forget that maybe they're being promoted for the wrong reasons, or they don't have sufficient what they need. So that's what I look at as a foundation. When you're talking about scaling and growing, when a company wants to scale and grow, this is your area of expertise, they want to be able to have a clear strategy, but they also want to be able to execute throughout the whole organization that strategy. Most people, as they move up through an organization, are focused on getting the work done. So they're focused on the tasks, the responsibilities, the timelines. Very few have a natural ability. My guess is around 30% have a natural ability to really pick up their heads and see the horizon. I would call that the strategy, the direction we're going in. So if you're promoting leaders, expecting them to think strategically without giving them some strategic thinking skills, or at least awareness that this is what I'm asking you to do now, then that's a recipe for not scaling, for failure, for people getting disenfranchised. So I hope that answered your question.
No, yeah, absolutely. And when you say people getting disenfranchised, I think the disenfranchisement happens on both ends.
Yep.
It's the leader of, the senior leader over that next level leader who's wanting that person to act more strategically, be more strategic, and they're not getting that, and therefore they become disenfranchised. Maybe I promoted the wrong person, they weren't ready, and the person themselves, they're a lot of them are stuck in that doer mode. That's what got them identified. That's why they got promoted in the first place.
Exactly.
They were strong individual contributors. So I was a strong individual contributor. I got promoted. I must keep doing that because that's what got me promoted. And suddenly now I'm not getting to the strategic stuff, whether because I don't know how or it hasn't been. To your point, I love when you said you have to make it clear. You have to set that expectation that that's a new thing for me. But the disenfranchisement happens on both sides. And also, so it's interesting. I'm coaching someone right now who was identified by their leader. Their leader asked me to work with this person to help them be more strategic. One of the first conversations that I had with the person, this next level leader, was, what does that mean? What does it mean to be more? So when your boss is saying, I want you to be more strategic, what does that mean? What does it mean to you? And what does it mean to your leader? And we laughed because he didn't know the answer. But between that, here's what's great about that. Between that first meeting and that second meeting, they met and got clarification.
That's
on
great.
What does that, and it was as simple as, we still laugh about it today. It was as simple as, I want you to be thinking 12 months or more out. Like, okay, now I know what that means. But in order to do that, that means I have to get rid of some of. So let's talk about that. Okay, that's a good lead into the next question. What are some of the mistakes or some of the challenges that you see as as we either try to develop next level leaders or as next level leaders get promoted? What are some of the more common mistakes that leaders should be aware of and try to avoid?
Well, I think one is what we were just talking about, is that you just assume because people perform well in one arena, they're going to perform well in the next. I think another is, which is more more global, is that what kind of culture are we promoting them into? So if we don't have a culture of learning or failure or authentic leadership, then we're asking people to step up into roles that we don't support culturally.
Yeah.
So that's kind of both ends of that spectrum. The other is people can start to act out. They can either, want to take control because they're afraid to say, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know what this, your example is terrific. Heaven forbid that when we step into new territory, we ask what it is we're supposed to be doing. I mean,
Right.
It's kind of a novel idea, isn't it? But I think there's a myth in our culture that leaders have all the answers. And I think the more you move up in an organization, that myth gets really entrenched. So then people either do what they do.
Yeah, to your point, they're embarrassed to ask because they're as if they're supposed to know.
Right.
How often do you see, or maybe what is what advice do you have for a CEO or a senior executive as they're promoting a strong doer into a leadership role? Is it fair to expect that person to just take on the leadership in addition to everything else? Or is that possible? I think because you see that happen a lot in organizations that are trying to balance costs. They're trying to balance, right? So we have a lot of working managers. Is that feasible? When does that work? When does that not work? Whereas it's a lot of questions all rolled up into one.
Well, in my experience, it never works. Because if we're going to take on more responsibility, then we have to let go of a few things.
Okay.
Okay. And in doing that, then we have to know how to delegate. Then we have to know how to let other people on our team lead or manage. Then we have to build a trust and, to build a culture of trust where people respect each other.
Right.
So that's part of it. Also, what was I just thinking? It goes back to the skills, the mindset, and the behaviors that are needed to fulfill the responsibilities we're being given. And all too often, we're just given a new job description. We're not given the permission to practice leadership. When you talk about leadership trainings, the effectiveness of sending somebody to a leadership training it's pretty sad, in the 15, 20%, 25%. But when you give people a little bit of skills and you have them go practice on real work situations together, so there's learning, then they integrate that learning and then they can work on the next skill. But if you're not doing something where people are integrating the learning, then they just sometimes get a new hammer to work with, right? Oh, I've got a bigger hammer, so I'm just going to wield this bigger hammer on you. Because leadership, especially at this level, is about impact and influence, and you only do that through other people. If we stop doing the work ourselves, which most of us stop doing when we move out of even a management position, then we're relying on our effectiveness with and through other people. And that requires, so you'll get me going because this is a topic I do love. That requires that I need to know myself, because I can only be effective with you or with our team if I can be effective with myself. So I have to connect with myself so I can connect with you so we can get clear about what work we're doing.
How does one get connected with themselves?
This is the what's the word? I don't remember the word I want to use. At any rate, It goes back to a lot about emotional intelligence. When you look at what a lot of CEOs, so maybe you, CEO listener, have experienced this. When you look at a lot of what CEOs are looking for in their employees, and when employees are looking for it in their leaders, it is about about emotional intelligence. It's about self-awareness. How do I naturally respond to a situation? How do I want to respond to a situation? So it's a process. We've had several guests on our program that have talked about different ways of becoming more self-aware. It can often be a freeing process, and it can also be a really painful process.
Yeah. Thinking from a timeline, it's something you said earlier sparked this thought. A lot of times, CEOs or leaders will strong individual contributors emerge. They begin to emerge. They identify themselves as highly accountable, good workers, great attitude, good fits into the culture, and we start thinking about them as potential leaders. Is it okay ever to promote somebody into that leadership role and train them on the job? Or would you recommend instead that that there be a training program before someone steps into that role? Or is it a yes and? I realize probably there's no one answer for everything, but what's ideal?
I'm a big fan of on-the-job training.
That's not the answer that I thought you were going to say.
Otherwise, you're in a classroom. Otherwise, I'm not dealing with the fact that our team has breakdowns. I'm not dealing with the fact that I'm scared to go in and deal with conflict. You have to be able to deal with what's going on in every moment. Because otherwise, if we just go get training, then we go in and think we're the experts. But ultimately, every organization wants results, and they want results that matter. That doesn't come in a bottle or a box somewhere. That comes through human interactions. Simon Sinek, who I'm a big fan of, says, if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. So business is first and foremost about people. What can we how can I bring myself best self, whether I'm a leader or a worker or the CEO? How can I bring my best self with all my, multitude of skills and, not so skilled areas to the table so that I can work effectively with you and honor and harness the differences that you bring, because it's our differences, which is counterintuitive as well. It's our differences that bring better solutions, more innovation to the table.
Yeah. I agree.
So,
okay. Well, so that right there, that segment was evidence that this is not a pre-scripted show, because that's not the answer I thought you were going to give.
I'd love to fool you.
I love it. I've known you for 8 years, and that's not the answer I thought you were going to give, but I love it, because how many listeners, how many leaders, CEOs don't have time, right? I think they'd say, listen, we don't have time or necessarily sometimes the money to invest in developing people well in advance. Plus, sometimes this happens, you develop people and then they leave and they take those newly developed skills with them. So it's on the job training is okay, but how do you set someone up for success through on the job training?
I think you have to have internal support.
Okay.
So someone, usually in HR, people in culture, in a department, that creates the framework for what are the advantages of you taking the time and us giving you the time to learn what does it mean to be the skills, the mindset, and the presence to be your next level of leader.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be an invitation internally.
Okay.
And either internally or externally, provide the skills, provide the awareness for people, but also give them the time to look at their blind spots, look at their strengths, look at what they care about, so that they are then becoming more themselves, but they also can take that into action with others. Like I said, if there's conflict or, you work in organizations. It's not like we're just going to go from here, across town. There's a lot of pitfalls,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of joys. I mean, it's not just the difficult part. It's like, let's celebrate what's going well.
So internal support. How about external? What are some of the external? I mean, I guess the obvious one is coaching, mentoring. But talk about the role that might play. And then are there any other external resources that you think of that would help a next level leader through that on the job training?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question in just a minute about coaching. If so, I said that stepping up into a new level of leadership requires new skills, mindsets, and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So helping people see these are the skills you need. You're talking about your strategic person, look 12 months out. Most people wouldn't have thought of that. So give people some frameworks for what it means to step up into a next level of leader. So what are the skills you need? What are the mindsets? We work a lot with helping people see a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. If you're going to promote people into a level of leadership where you want them to think strategically, you certainly want them to have more of a growth mindset than a fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So even introducing that distinction is important, because sometimes I fall in one camp and sometimes I fall in the other, depending on the subject. And then helping people see, I hope I'm answering your question, helping people see that how I show up, how I presence myself matters. This is my favorite one, and I think that it's the most forgotten, or the people are the least aware. Like, one company we work with, they bring all their employees together annually for, they're people from all over the country, but they come annually. They had a group of 120 people. The CEO got up with the mic, was trying to get people's attention. Nobody listened. The president decided he was going to get up and take the mic. Nobody listened. So a person leading a big department got up and somebody said, "Oh, look who's up there. We need to listen. Oh, look." And suddenly 120 people were totally focused on this person, because she has a way of being and a presence that connects with people, that cares about people. And the way she shows up shows that she cares.
It's powerful.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
But most of us don't think that how we presence ourselves is part of the equation.
So you said those three things. You said give your next level leaders a framework for how to be successful: skills, mindset, and
presence.
That's okay. Skills, mindset, and presence. So then, okay, now bring it back to coaching.
Yes.
Or maybe the internal and external resource sources. Let's pause on the coaching. Okay, what role does coaching or mentoring play in developing next level leaders?
I think in one of those two forms, it's really imperative. And coaching can be, I have an outside coach, so I have one-on-ones. I have an inside mentor. There are different, coaching and mentoring are different. We're moving more towards peer coaching and small group. We call it practical application. So people are coaching each other because it's more cost effective, and then ultimately it builds stronger relationships quicker. And it builds trust quicker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to go to a coach, which is external, and you can say and do it, but that's important, especially for more executive leaders. But when I have to be my real self with you, who's my colleague, that builds a different level of trust.
That's interesting. So the concept of peer coaching to help an organization's next level leaders develop. So if I make sure that I understand, so the next level leaders themselves would come together and coach each other, right? I love it. And that's my favorite kind of coaching. That's the kind that I do with my clients. I know it's the kind you do with your clients. Practical application coaching, like what's keeping you awake at night, and how can we unpack that? Come up with a few different ways that you might look at it. Some new tools. That's to me that's the kind of coaching I've always found most effective. How do you? So if I'm a leader and I fell in love with that idea as you explained it, and I want to implement that into my organization, how do you keep that from becoming just like a bitch session or like a venting? Like we all come together and just, how do we keep it productive? Does it require a facilitator, or does it require ground rules? What has worked? What have you seen work in the past?
I think if it's not a integrated piece in an organization, then having a facilitator, it's more like a co-coach. So it's not somebody that orchestrates it, but somebody is there to help when people get stuck. So that's one thing. The other is and I know you are too, a firm believer that people actually have professional development plans. So they know where they want to go. It's like your person you're talking about, 12 months from now, that might be an objective for that person to learn how to think more strategically in the next year. And then what are the steps they need to do that? So having people more and more, and this is thanks to our colleague Leb, understand what their purpose is. What's their purpose? Not necessarily just in their organization, but what's their purpose? Why do they exist? Not to get too grandiose, but so they all have a foundation, which is a very vulnerable place for a lot of people. I'm surprised how many people haven't thought about that. Much less willing to tell you. So that's one thing. But part of that is then, how do I build on that? Given where I am, stepping into this new place of leadership, what are the 2 or 3 things that I want to focus on this year to help me and my team be successful in my organization? So that peer coaching is much more effective if that is a foundation, or if that's a key component of the coaching. Like how you doing on your 12-month strategy, or how.
Got it.
Right.
So holding each other accountable.
Yes.
To those points. So it's not just creating them, but then sharing them.
Right.
In that. I like that.
And another piece I found really successful is doing some sort of 360 review or leadership assessment, or some way for people to go, oh, I can count on myself. My team really counts on this. And here's a blind spot or 2 that I have.
Yeah.
And if I'm committed to being the kind of leader I want to be, then I need to look at my blind spots. That is a really difficult place for people. So those are some of the components that I've found that are really useful to help people stay focused on the future state they want to create at this point in time.
That's good. I also, I want to clarify, or not clarify, but maybe extrapolate a little bit. Sometimes in the coaching sessions that we do, with whether that's with CEOs or senior leaders or next level leaders, sometimes those can devolve into a bitch session or a venting session. But I think what my own experience, what always makes it productive, is to not leave it there, but instead say, okay, so what do you want to do about that? Like, okay, that's good. You got that out. Fantastic.
Yes.
Now what? Where do we go from here?
Yes.
So if you're listener, if you're implementing that, like a peer coaching in your organization, I think it's natural that may occasionally happen. You get a little bit of emptying, venting, frustrations, sharing frustrations. but then always challenging the leaders to come back to challenge themselves and each other. Okay, so what are you going to do about that? Because you can't just walk out of here and leave that there. That then becomes an unproductive session. That's my opinion.
Yep, I totally agree with that. If we don't start by acknowledging that we're human beings,
Yeah,
that we have a body, that we have emotions, then we're missing the mark. We're just trying to plug people in, which is what we've done in our businesses for a long time. And it's, I heard somebody recently talk about the Gallup poll, the recent Gallup poll, 69% of the people, workers are disenfranchised.
Mm.
That comes from, plugging people into spaces. Yeah.
And did it speak to why? I asked because in prior surveys, a lot of surveys, whether it's Gallup surveys or other engagement surveys, the root cause. I remember when we did the quiet quitting episode a number of episodes ago, we talked about the cure for quiet quitting is better leaders in the organization, right? Leaders who can connect, like you talked about the presence that one leader had from not in that moment. That was the manifestation of all of the days and weeks and hours and that she invested in building those relationships. Like you build that credibility so that when the great resignation comes, you're insulated from that because you've built relationships. It's still true to this day that people join companies and quit leaders. It's hugely true.
I think, boy, there's about 3 different directions I could go in, but I'm a firm believer that we have to connect before we can communicate. And leadership and getting results is all about connecting so we can effectively communicate. So if I'm the employee on the receiving end or the team on the receiving end, know what I'm supposed to do and what I bring to the table that allows me to be the one person that can do that. And that's where I think then people do start to feel engaged. They know why they're there and what they're doing. And, again, a lot of the work you do is around strategy and then execution within a culture. That this is the bookend to connecting individually is that then we can all connect with where are we headed. For the sake of what are we headed in this direction?
Yeah.
We're going to be consistently going in that direction. And this is how we're going to get there. Because it does filter down through the whole organization, hopefully. So then it can rise back up.
Yep. Well, so you brought up, thank you. I always appreciate the recognition. My passion is execution. Absolutely. My passion is execution. And I always remind CEOs that you need 3 primary things in place in order to execute any strategy. Right? You can develop a great strategy, but if you don't have these 3 things in place, then good luck executing. First one I always say is leadership alignment, right? That's at that senior leadership team level. And trust me, you can have a plan that everybody agrees on and still not have alignment, right? Because you think everybody agrees on it, but we didn't have the conversations in the room that we really needed to have to make sure that we're aligned. That's first. The third one that you need is you need a great culture. And I'm going out of order on purpose. The third thing you need a great culture because good luck executing without your people, right? If you don't have the people engaged, then when you try to, down in the trenches, when you start trying to execute a strategic plan and you need people to do things differently, they're not gonna. It's just not gonna happen. But that second thing, that middle thing that you need is you need strong next level leaders in the organization. You need people who can cascade your vision, your mission down into the organization, who have that credibility, that gravitas, that those relationships built so that they can lead the people through execution, that they are an extension of you. And I opened with as CEO, if you don't have that strong next level of leadership, then all that work falls to you. Like now you and your leadership team, your senior leadership team, are having to really dip down into the trenches to try to engage the people through execution, because you can't, unfortunately, count on your next level of leaders to carry that message. They need to be they need to hold themselves accountable before they hold their teams accountable. But it's such an important, and when you have those three things in place, and you can't have one without the other two, or you can't have two without the other one. You need all three. And when you have those in place, you can execute like nobody's business.
Well, and this takes us full circle to where we started, and me saying I really wanted to focus on that next level of leaders who's stepping up into more of a strategic mindset. And it's that strategic execution. I often call that the knuckle. I call it a knuckle. I'm looking for a new name. So if anybody out there has a new name for me, and it's when I go from, I'm no longer doing the work. I'm no longer responsible for other people doing the work. I'm responsible for people doing the work and understanding how the work aligns with strategy.
Right.
Which is the execution piece.
Right.
I remember working with a contractor who had 5 different locations, and they identified 15 people that to be part of this strategic execution team. People were so excited they could get in there and get the work done. But where they were like, I don't know how to do this, is I don't know how to show up and exemplify our culture in a way, and the value of our culture in a way that people want to engage in execution. Or even how to think about it 12 months from now, or how to think about it. Because strategic thinking is, I think, thinking horizontally. So that's at 12 months out. It's also thinking vertically. Where are we headed? How are we going to get there? How does our culture align? Do we have the people in place? And does everybody know what direction we're going in? So all of a sudden you're going from heads down to 360, living in a 360 world. It literally is mind-boggling for a lot of people. Wait a minute, I'm really good at doing widgets, but I don't know I'm good about thinking about trends.
Yeah. It's fast. So that same person I was talking about earlier, in my first conversation with that leader, they said, yeah, I'm not good at being strategic. So tell me what that means. And as we unpacked that and really looked at a whole lot of different things that this person has already accomplished, they actually are quite strategic. Like they wouldn't have been put into the position that they're in if they hadn't been able to think further out, like be good at developing where do we need to go and why, having that but had just become convinced I'm not good at it. When it's funny, the minute he had that aha moment with his leader, this is what it means. I want you to be thinking 12 months and more out. Immediately we stopped saying I'm not strategic, and immediately went to, oh, I can do that. Oh, I do that. I'll do it all the time. Great. But then that sparked a whole other set of conversations about, and I want to come back to delegation. There's a whole other set of conversations. There was this aha moment for this leader. Okay, if I'm going to do that, that means I have to get a lot of these other things off my plate. You mentioned delegation. Why do next level leaders struggle with delegation? And what are some strategies that how do you coach someone to embrace delegation?
Well, I'll answer that question in just a minute. I remember working with on a program, and we had a guest speaker. She was head of a large transportation company on the East Coast. And she said, you have to let go. You have to let go of who you've known yourself to be in order to step into the next iteration of yourself, who you want yourself to be next. And I think there's some skills with delegation, so I can get to that in just a minute. But I think if you don't have a vision for yourself about where you're headed, then delegation is much harder, because then you don't have a guiding star, northern light, whatever. I think with delegation, to get really practical, you have to be very clear about what you're asking people to do.
Okay.
I'm asking you to attend this meeting on a weekly basis. It's an hour basis. You'll have an hour's worth of, follow-up. Can you do that? Oh, you need more information. Okay, here's some more information. So I think you have to be really clear and specific about what you're asking people to do. Do they agree to do it? Which we don't give people in companies that option very often. And then for them to know that you're there to support them, especially if it's new learning for them. And then you have to go back and say, how's it going? So that could be mentoring, that could be coaching, that could be having a buddy system. It could be a lot of different things. So you're smiling. What are you smiling about?
No, that's good. That's good. This is awesome. I think I mentioned we then launched into, okay, there are things on your plate that you're going to have to clear your plate so that you can meet this new expectation of becoming more strategic. And I'm oversimplifying. It works for me. I like to do this, but I think, it's a pretty short list of reasons why people struggle to delegate. Sometimes it's a control thing. Like, and control could be, I don't think people will do it as well as I will. Control could be, I don't have the time to, it's just easier for me to do it, which is true, but short-sighted, right? Because if that's the case, it'll never change. It could be, sometimes it's protectionism, right? It's job protection. It's like, well, if I'm the only one doing this, then they have to keep me around. And it's amazing how often that manifests itself, how often that people are motivated by all kinds of things. So that's the control thing. I think sometimes it's, to your point, maybe the expectation wasn't set for me. Maybe I didn't know it was even an option. As weird as that sounds, like just thinking, no, I have to do my old job and now I have to add this leadership thing onto it without recognizing, no, I have to, like, that goes on. You said at the beginning, some things are going to have to go away. So, okay, delegation is my tool for that. Sometimes I think leaders struggle to delegate because they don't want to overburden their people. They don't want to overload them. So there's like an empathy or if somebody's going to have to work nights and weekends, it's going to be me. One of the things, it's just a universal truth. Everything has a cost. So plenty of leaders burn out by doing that, by taking everything on. And then again, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So if that's what I'm doing, then my people they have nice cushy jobs, but I'm struggling.
Well, you're also helping me see that a foundation for what we're talking about, whether it's delegation or stepping into more leadership, is trust and respect. And if I haven't built that with my employees, with the people that report to me, and any of these things you just talked about are in play, then delegation is going to seem really hard to me.
And potentially hard to them.
Yep. And if that person that's being asked to step up doesn't have the coach you're talking about, or some peer support, or some way of learning, then I think there is a myth in our culture, in our businesses, that we just have to keep taking on more. We just have to keep piling on more. We keep piling on more. I think delegation is I don't know, be interested to get your opinion on that too, is really hard for people. Accountability and delegation.
I agree with you. I think it's so hard that I see it happening most when people get overwhelmed, when they finally have no choice. Like that they'll fight it, they'll resist it until they just break. And there's a cost to that too, because then you're not always doing it the right way. Like you said, then it stems from a place of exhaustion or desperation. And that's not moving from a healthy place. It's moving from an unhealthy place.
Well, and so we keep going full circle. We're going to go full circle again, back to emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I know myself and my, tendencies, whether it's to overload myself or to not ask for help or whatever it is, then the easier it is actually going to be to delegate, because then I can see, I have a tendency to get overwhelmed and to take on too much. If I notice that to begin with, then I can change my behaviors.
Yeah.
Or I can ask for help to change my behaviors. So I had a someone I've been coaching on and off for the last couple of years, and she's realized I'm a control freak. And it just shows up. That's how we are as human beings. Our can't ask for help because we want to be perfect, or our desire to control just shows up and we're swept away by it. So to her credit, she started to notice I'm a control freak. And so then she could just have a nanosecond when that popped up for her to catch herself. And then when she noticed that, then she goes, okay, I choose not to control in this minute. What do I need to do now? So then she had the skills to do something else.
Mm.
And then she celebrated that, because now she isn't as overwhelmed because other people are on her team. She's delegated to, and guess what? People are doing it. They're doing well. They're celebrating it. People are actually, so she also realized that delegation is giving other people the opportunity to shine. It's giving
Absolutely.
other people the opportunity to learn. It's given, and to let them know that she has their back.
That's really, really, that's when that light bulb goes on for a leader, that they realize that by keeping all that work, not only is it impacting you, your physical health, your emotional health, your ability, how you feel about whether you're succeeding or not, any impact it might have on your home life, right? Because you're just taking all that stress on. Not only is it impacting you that way, but you are, in a way, robbing your people of a chance to grow and develop them. And most high performers want that. I would say most all high performers want the opportunity to. So what I often will advise a new leader is, in all likelihood, you're going to under delegate rather than over delegate. So my advice to you would be, continue to delegate and check in with your people regularly. Like always, to make sure things are on track. Delegation isn't just, here's the project, I'll see you on the due date, right? So you have to check in regularly with expectations. How's it going? Where are you hung up? But also check in regularly with your people, so that if they are overloaded, then you're not surprised. You can immediately take something back, or you can immediately reshift their priorities. But error on the side of, especially with high performers, error on the side of giving them more than less, and keep the lines of communication open so you can adjust accordingly.
Which goes back to culture. If you've got a culture of learning and trust
and open communication,
then
that works.
Okay.
Do you have any stories about like a strong next level leader, or someone with potential who was promoted into a leadership role and it backfired?
I have a story, not quite backfiring, but somebody that was promoted, and they got into the position and they said, this is a mistake for me. So in some regards, it backfired from their perspective, because they said, I thought I wanted to make a lot more money, and I thought I wanted to climb that, but this is what it comes with, and I'm not ready for that. This is actually not what I want. So I want to go back to my old job, but I want to expand my old job, which is more in the program development arena than where I was before, because she started drowning.
Mm.
Her teams weren't working well. She went from managing 2 people to managing 45 in 2 different countries, yes, with no support or very little support. And what she found out is she didn't like leading or managing people. So to her credit, she was able to say, this, I need to do something else.
So is there a lesson in there? How can that work? When so if as a CEO I promote someone into a leadership role, do I do that with the understanding that if they're struggling and it doesn't work, we can undo it? Or like, or is it like, sorry, we should have thought more about that, and that ship has sailed, and it's like, can you undo it?
I've seen it undone, and I've seen people not willing to undo it, and then people fail, and then they leave, and then you've got a big hole in that organization.
Yeah.
It's tough. And I think the way to head that off at the pass, so to speak, if we're talking about ships, is to engage, not just offer a promotion to somebody, but engage with them about what does their career path look like?
Mm.
Where do they want to go? What are the strengths they want to bring to the table? Where do they see themselves in 2 or 3 years? Because I think there is a myth in our business, and some aspects of our business that's all about promotion. So we all think that we just are waiting for the next promotion and the next this and the next that. Instead, many people that are younger in the workforce than you and I are, Patrick, are now questioning, what a holistic approach to their life.
Yes.
So promotions have a different, resonance with many of them than certainly maybe when, the business world we know, but it's still pretty prominent.
I think that's a really good point. How often have you talked with or worked with a next level leader who's struggling, who admits in the coaching arrangement, in the coaching relationship, that they took the job because they thought they were supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
not because they wanted to, but because it was more money, or it was kind of presented as, you should take this. And when that happens, it not only do you risk losing them, but then their team struggles because they're not necessarily embracing the leadership role. So maybe talk about that. What is the cost of not developing your next level leaders, or what is the cost, what is the cost of putting the wrong people into some of those roles?
Well, if a company wants to grow and scale, they need to develop a bench, or they need to develop, people that are capable of doing the work, doing the job of leading. So if the example you're talking about is, it doesn't build that capacity. So they don't build capacity, and people get disenfranchised. Oh, if that happened to Patrick, I don't want that.
Mm.
So don't you dare talk to me about a promotion. Don't you dare talk to me. So people who really, as you were talking about earlier, really want to step up, but they see examples around them about what happened to people when they do step up and don't get supported. Well, I'm not going there.
Mm-hmm.
On the bigger scale, companies get reputations.
Mm.
There's some architectural firms in the community where I live, where it's known that, they scale up and then they let people go when they're not busy. That's not a reputation that I would want to build in my company. So it builds reputations. I also think, it wastes an incredible amount of goodwill, of heart, of just, efficiency, of, getting the right things done at the right time. So if we were really to look at that, what's involved in that 69% of the business community that's disenfranchised, there's a lot of that. There's just a lot of wasted time, energy. One thing I continue to hear, which shocks me today, is I'm in too many meetings. I can't get my work done because I'm in too many meetings. That's kind of an aside, but that is part of it. If somebody was really embraced the role that they were there for, then they would start to say, how do we work well together? Are you in too many meetings? So that's a couple of things that come to my mind.
It's beautiful. All right, let's round third and start to head home. Before we let's get practical. Before we do the let's get practical, as we do for every episode, speaking to the leaders who are listening now, what advice would you give to a leader who's struggling to develop their next level leaders in their organization? What are the steps that they can take to position for success in this area?
Allow people to be human, accept that we are all human beings wanting to do some sort of work or be in the marketplace. So that's one thing. So are we moving into the let's get practical?
Well, no, but I realize it's almost a question that leads right into, because our let's get practical is usually advice for the CEO.
Yeah,
so maybe
feels that way. Feels that way to me. So
okay, so let's do that. So listen, let's hold that thought. This is the part of every program where we try to give you specific steps that you can take in your business, in your organization, to make progress, to grow and develop in the area that we've talked about today. So in this case, it's developing the next level leaders, and not just them, but creating a culture that supports them through that process as well. So back to you, Patsy. The first one you said is allow people to be human. Okay.
Yep. Accept our humanness. Accept our humanity.
Yeah. What else?
That leadership is about impact and influence.
I wrote that one.
Okay. I'm going to steal it back from you.
Yep.
And that leadership starts with the person sitting in our seat. So leadership starts with being present and connecting to ourselves first, so we can connect to other people.
Yeah.
And it is that connection, that authentic connection to others, that's where the results really happens.
Yeah.
So results happen through effective interaction with other people.
It's really good.
And one more I would add is that there are at least 3 components to being an effective leader. When we're stepping, what are the skills we need? Skills and competencies. What's the mindset? And how do we show up? How do we presence ourselves?
And it sounds like coaching or any kind of development needs to be addressing all 3 of those.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. Beautiful. All right. Well, you didn't lead me very much, but that's okay. This was your show. Okay, I'm going to go. So I'm going to add a point you made right off the bat. Don't assume that a strong individual contributor will naturally be a strong leader. It is a different set of skills, and so there has to be that visioning of not where I am, but where do I need to go to help me figure out what's the gap and what are. I think, to your point, falls into those skills, mindset, and presence. But be careful on that assumption. I love what you said when you said, really, in order to be successful, if leadership is added, some other things need to go away, and that may be where delegation comes in. It may be where you said it might be a new job, new redesigning the job. But that if we just make it additive, then people will struggle. This was fascinating to me. I said it in the moment, but On-the-job training is perfectly fine for your next level leaders, but we've got to provide good internal support to help them succeed and be willing to get them any external support as well. I think anybody who has ever received coaching can tell you the payoff is exponentially greater. I mean, there's a real ROI on the. It certainly is better than allowing your leaders to just flounder, for sure. I think this one was really good too. They were all really good. Be aware, be cognizant of the culture that you have, that you are promoting people into. Is it the kind of culture that supports? Is it like a lifelong learning kind of culture? Is it the kind of culture where I can openly admit I have no idea what I'm doing? I just thought that was be aware of that, because that's the culture that your next level leaders are trying to be successful in. And then the last one I'll add, I still have more, but then I'll throw it back to you. I like the idea of consider implementing peer coaching for your next level of leaders. That can be a powerful and practical way of building relationships, as well as giving each of them practical ideas and ways to overcome what ails them. So, okay. What else you got?
I will add one more, which we didn't really talk about. Results are an outcome of the conversations we have. And those conversations, to be effective, are built on trust, respect, and connection.
I like it.
So,
okay. I think that's a good mic drop moment.
Okay.
So I won't add anything else. Patsy, people already know you, but if anyone is interested in, if this is an area in particular that they've been struggling developing the next level leaders, and they want to engage you for consultation, or they want to learn more about what coaching might look like, I will tell you, listener, Patsy will not toot her own horn, but she is one of the best that I know at developing and unlocking the potential of next level leaders. It's the passion that she has. She just connects really well with people. So, Patsy, if someone is interested in finding out more or contacting you, what's the best way to do that?
There are two ways. So help me with this one. Patsy at The Frustrated CEO, or Patsy at newlegendsnow.com.
Excellent. Yeah.
Or LinkedIn.
Excellent. Yeah. And we'll make sure that your contact information is on our website, which is where, listener, you know this by now, it's where you'll find this episode's Let's Get Practical, as well as all the other Let's Get Practicals from prior episodes. Thank you for sticking with us to the end of another one. Patsy, thank you so much. This was long overdue.
This was so fun.
This was long overdue, putting you on the, whether you want to call it the hot seat or putting you in the spotlight, because this is an area that is, I just know organization after organization struggles with this.
Yep.
We talked about how critically important it is in order to execute. And this is something that you are really excellent at. And so, so I apologize to our listener for waiting until episode 47. I don't even know, for giving this to you. But our hope is that you find at least one thing today that you can take and implement to improve your organization. So Patsy, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Great to have you. Okay, listener, check us out on at thefrustratedceo.com, or as Patsy already said in how you can connect with her, please do connect with all of us on LinkedIn. You can find us, or you can also check out our show page. If you go into LinkedIn and do a search for The Frustrated CEO, you will find our podcast show page. Connect with us there. Definitely follow. You'll get snippets from this and every episode on a daily basis. We like to call it the Daily Leadership Vitamin. I like to call it that. Nobody else likes to call it
that. I haven't heard that before.
See, it's just a me thing. It's not a we thing. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time on the Frustrated CEO podcast.